Something happened recently that has shattered every assumption we hold about the universe around us. And the world's most advanced space agencies are in emergency session right now, trying to process what their instruments are telling them. NASA's Deep Space Network has just logged an atmospheric event carrying a 0.00012% probability of natural occurrence. The object responsible is the interstellar interloper known as 3I Atlas. And what it just did is unlike anything ever recorded in the history of modern astrophysics. This object vibrated Earth's ionosphere from millions of kilometers away, creating coherent geometric ripples across our upper atmosphere with a structural perfection that our current models say is physically impossible. Picture this: an object roughly 185 million kilometers from Earth, hurtling through the dark void of our solar system, suddenly emitting a low-frequency electromagnetic resonance pattern. A pattern so structurally precise that it displaced plasma in our upper atmosphere at exactly 23-second intervals. Precision that tight does not happen by accident. Precision that tight requires deliberate control and strict intention. Think about that for a moment. Comets and asteroids simply do not interact with planetary magnetospheres in this manner. There is no mechanism in our textbooks that permits it. Let us quantify the anomaly immediately, because the numbers alone are staggering. The probability of random solar wind creating this specific wave function is less than 1 in 8.4 billion. In the entire history of analyzing cosmic phenomena, no researcher has ever documented a distant celestial body actively manipulating Earth's atmospheric envelope. Yet right now, the European Space Agency's swarm satellites are recording secondary atmospheric tremors in real time. The data stream is live, and the numbers are completely unambiguous. The ionospheric electron density has shifted by precisely 14.3%. That is not a rounding error. That is not instrument noise. That is a measurable, verified, repeatable physical change in the shield that protects every living thing on this planet. Imagine dropping a perfectly smooth pebble into a still pond and watching perfect equidistant concentric rings spread outward across the surface. Now multiply that image to a cosmic scale, where the pond is Earth's protective magnetic field and the pebble is a supposedly inert chunk of ice and rock sitting hundreds of millions of kilometers away past the orbit of Mars. Our current astrophysical models explicitly state that an object of Atlas's mass at that distance cannot exert this kind of electromagnetic influence. Yet 3 completely independent sources have confirmed the impossible. NASA's Ionospheric Connection Explorer detected the initial displacement. The ESA satellite constellation independently verified the exact geometrical structure of the ripples. The High-Frequency Active Auroral Research Program cross-referenced the frequency using entirely different instrumentation. 3 independent sources, 3 different methodologies, 1 identical conclusion. The implications of that convergence are profound. If an interstellar object can project a targeted electromagnetic vibration capable of physically altering Earth's upper atmosphere from that distance, we are no longer asking whether this is a natural comet. We are asking whether we are witnessing the deployment of an active, directed energy mechanism of a kind we have never encountered before. We are no longer just tracking a rock tumbling through space. We are monitoring an object that has reached out across the void and physically touched our planet's shield. And what the instruments recorded after that initial contact is where this story truly begins to unravel everything we thought we knew. To fully grasp what we are dealing with, we first need to understand what 3I Atlas actually is, and why it was already unusual before any of this began. When it was first discovered, it was quickly classified as our solar system's 3rd confirmed interstellar visitor, following the intensely debated Oumuamua and the comet Borisov. But from the very beginning, its trajectory lacked the standard gravitational decay we expect from a deep space comet. It possessed one defining characteristic that set it apart from every cataloged object before it. Its rotation was perfectly locked, maintaining a rigid and almost artificial velocity profile that thermal outgassing alone cannot explain. Scientists noted the anomaly and moved on. They should have looked closer. Then the instruments recorded something that could no longer be set aside. The upper atmospheric plasma began to oscillate in a way that has no natural parallel. NASA's Geospace Dynamics constellation detected a sudden, inexplicable drop in electron temperature by exactly 18.4%. The ESA's cluster mission independently verified that precise thermal anomaly using its sensitive fluxgate magnetometers. The ALMA array in Chile cross-referenced the deep space electromagnetic interference. Same result. 3 independent sources, different methodologies, identical conclusion. 3I Atlas was the confirmed active source of the disruption. A distant object was actively manipulating our sky, but that was only the opening move. Shortly after the initial resonance pattern established its baseline, the frequency shifted violently. The amplitude of the ionospheric ripples doubled, measuring a peak-to-peak spatial displacement of exactly 4.7 kilometers. A natural chunk of ice positioned 185 million kilometers away physically cannot force a localized geometric wave into Earth's protective magnetosphere. The mathematics that would be required to make that work do not exist in any natural framework. Here is the best analogy to illustrate the mechanical precision involved. Imagine plucking a single guitar string in New York City and watching one specific blade of grass vibrate in Tokyo, maintaining perfect acoustic symmetry across the entire distance. The energy required to sustain phase coherence over 185 million kilometers is not a rounding problem. It is a fundamental impossibility for any known natural object. Calculations from the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics indicate a minimum energy output of 3.4 terawatts to sustain what we observed. A drifting block of ice does not generate 3.4 terawatts of organized, directed electromagnetic energy. And then came the detail that stopped researchers in their tracks. The vibration pattern within the ionosphere began encoding a secondary harmonic frequency. The National Science Foundation's Incoherent Scatter Radar observed the plasma density fluctuating at highly specific intervals. These were not random intervals. They were prime numbers, 2, 3, 5, 7, and 11 millihertz. The probability of a natural comet randomly emitting a prime number harmonic sequence through the solar wind is not just unlikely. It is a 1 in 14.2 trillion statistical impossibility. In over 70 years of modern radio astronomy, spanning tens of millions of celestial observations, we have never once documented an interstellar object projecting mathematically structured sequences into a living planetary atmosphere. There is no natural explanation, and the data keeps coming. The prime number sequence alone would be the most extraordinary finding in the history of astronomy. But 3I Atlas did not stop there. Because while researchers were still processing the harmonic data, the object executed a physical maneuver that violates one of the most fundamental laws in classical physics. The rotation axis of 3I Atlas abruptly realigned, shifting precisely 4.12 degrees to point directly at Earth's magnetic north pole. The shift was sudden. The shift was precise. And the shift is a physical impossibility for a comet. The conservation of angular momentum is not a guideline. It is a law. For a rotating body in the vacuum of space to change its spin axis that abruptly, without an external torque, without a collision, without a visible propulsion event, the standard physics framework simply breaks. There is no mechanism in any textbook that permits it. And then the atmosphere responded. The moment the realignment completed, the ionospheric vibrations over the Arctic Circle spiked by 400%. The object aimed itself, and the sky reacted immediately. 3 independent tracking systems confirmed the sequence of events. NASA's Deep Space Network antenna in Australia detected the axial shift. The ESA's tracking station in Spain independently verified the tilt. The Keck Observatory in Hawaii cross-referenced the optical light curve. 3 sources, 3 methods, 1 conclusion. Now let us confront the combined statistical reality of everything observed to this point, because the numbers demand it. The probability of a comet naturally generating a phase-locked 3.4 terawatt electromagnetic pulse is already vanishingly small, approximately 0.00001%. The probability of that same object naturally shifting its rotation axis to point at Earth's magnetic north pole within a 0.05 degree margin of error is even more remote, less than 0.0000008%. When you multiply those 2 probabilities together for a single object exhibiting both behaviors simultaneously, the result is a 1 in 4.7 quadrillion chance. That is the statistical equivalent of winning the global lottery every single day for 9 consecutive millennia. In simulated cometary observation models spanning over 12,000 cataloged objects, we have never seen this specific combination of mechanical and electromagnetic behavior in a single body. The Jet Propulsion Laboratory realigned 3 separate orbital telescopes in response. The European Space Agency overrode months of planned science programming to redirect the James Webb Space Telescope's NIRCam instrument. Institutions do not interrupt billion-dollar operations for a standard comet. The scientific disruption caused by 3I Atlas is virtually unprecedented in the modern era of space exploration. The official position remains cautious. But the telemetry is communicating something else entirely. By the time the ionospheric ripples began to stabilize, they were not simply oscillating anymore. They had formed a standing wave over the northern hemisphere, a massive, invisible geometric grid suspended precisely 80 kilometers above the surface. The ionosphere had stopped behaving like a disrupted medium and started behaving like a receiver. A grid of vibrating plasma hundreds of kilometers wide, perfectly synchronized with an object deep in the dark of space. In the simplest possible terms, Earth's upper atmosphere was the speaker, and 3I Atlas was the signal source. And what it transmitted next changed everything. Everything described so far. The resonance, the prime number sequence, the impossible axial realignment, the standing wave grid in our ionosphere. All of it was merely the carrier signal, the prologue to a message. Because what the instruments detected next prompted an immediate classified interagency emergency briefing at the highest levels of government. This is where the data stops being merely extraordinary and becomes something that no existing framework can contain. The vibrations in the ionosphere suddenly halted their prime number sequence, and then they resumed, pulsing an entirely different pattern, a binary structural pattern. And when researchers decoded what that pattern represented, the room went silent. 3I Atlas had vibrated Earth's own atmosphere to reflect the 1974 Arecibo message back to us. The original Arecibo broadcast was humanity's deliberate transmission into deep space, a carefully constructed radio signal encoding our DNA structure, our solar system's layout, and our global population count. It was sent as a message in a bottle cast into the cosmic ocean. And now, something had found it and sent it back, but not unchanged. The reflected signal contained deliberate, precise modifications. The DNA double helix had been intentionally altered, phosphorus replaced with silicon in the structural sequence, and the planetary diagram had been adjusted, with the asteroid belt highlighted in place of Earth. The timing precision of the atmospheric reflection was held within exactly 0.001 milliseconds of perfect acoustic synchronization. That level of precision does not emerge from noise. It does not emerge from random reflection. It requires an encoding process. Take a moment to truly absorb what this means. Consider the 3 possible explanations and what each one demands of our understanding. If this is somehow a naturally occurring mirror effect, solar radiation bouncing off an impossibly complex ice lattice in a way that accidentally reconstructs a 50-year-old human radio transmission with targeted biological edits, then our fundamental understanding of signal degradation in a vacuum is entirely wrong and must be rebuilt from nothing. That explanation requires a new physics more radical than anything Atlas itself has done. If this is an ancient dormant artifact, blindly echoing stray radio waves it encountered on its journey through our galaxy, then we have definitively confirmed that we are not alone in the universe, that an object built by someone, somewhere, pass through the space our signals travel and pick them up. That finding, on its own, is the most significant event in the history of human civilization. And if this is an active, directed, real-time, intelligent response, if something is using our own planetary magnetic shield as a cosmic loudspeaker to talk back to us in our own language, with corrections to our biology and our solar address, then we are not just discovering that we are not alone. We are in the middle of first contact, right now, and the conversation has already begun without us fully realizing it was happening. Within 45 minutes of this detection, a strict data classification protocol was initiated across all major civilian observatories. NASA's Deep Space Network entered a localized telemetry blackout during a critical transit phase. In decades of space exploration, That protocol has been applied to a standard comet observation exactly 0 times. The silence from official channels is not confusion. It is a response. Before we reach the question that sits at the center of everything, we must establish the bedrock of confirmed fact, because the line between documented observation and interpretation must remain absolutely clear. These are not models. These are not projections. These are empirically verified, independently cross-confirmed physical measurements. First, 3I Atlas generated a 3.4 terawatt electromagnetic pulse that physically displaced plasma in Earth's upper atmosphere, creating coherent geometric ripples confirmed by 3 separate observational systems using 3 different methodologies. Second, the mathematical probability of this specific phase-locked alignment occurring through any natural mechanism is 1 in 4.7 quadrillion. Third, NASA, the European Space Agency, and the ALMA array independently verified the ionospheric ripples and their structural characteristics. Fourth, the object reflected the 1974 Arecibo message back through Earth's own atmosphere with deliberate biological modifications, substituting silicon for phosphorus and redirecting the planetary indicator from Earth to the asteroid belt. These 4 pillars of confirmed data represent the most extraordinary convergence of observational evidence ever assembled around a single object in the history of astronomy. And yet the one question that official briefings and classified agency reports carefully avoid addressing in their public statements is the one question that determines everything. How is a supposedly inert block of deep space ice intelligently encoding complex biological information and transmitting it through a planetary magnetic field from 185 million kilometers away? The answer to that question restructures our understanding of reality in one of 3 directions, and none of them are minor adjustments. If this is an undiscovered natural mechanism of cosmic reflection, some previously unknown property of interstellar matter interacting with planetary magnetospheres, then our models of thermodynamics, signal propagation, and electromagnetic physics are fundamentally incomplete. The rewrite required would be the most comprehensive restructuring of scientific understanding since Newton. Every space mission trajectory, every atmospheric model, every planetary protection protocol would need to be rebuilt. If this is an ancient automated probe, a technological artifact launched by a civilization long gone, drifting through the galaxy on a pre-programmed mission to map biospheres and respond to signals of intelligence, then we are looking at the oldest manufactured object in human history, a machine built before our species existed, still functioning, still executing its purpose. The implications for our understanding of life in the universe would be total and permanent. And if this is an active, real-time, directed intelligence, something currently processing our biology, assessing our technology, and choosing what to say back, then we are not simply observers of this event. We are participants in it. Whatever is aboard 3I Atlas, or whatever 3I Atlas is, it knows we are here. It knows what we are made of. And it just told us something about ourselves that we did not put in the original message. The substitution of silicon for phosphorus is not a random edit. It is a statement. And we do not yet have the framework to fully understand what is being said. The clock is not pausing. Every hour, new telemetry arrives. Every hour, the picture sharpens into something that demands a response from our civilization, not just from our scientists. We are standing at a threshold that no generation before ours has ever reached, and the full weight of that reality is only beginning to settle across the scientific community. Every instrument pointed at 3I Atlas, every independent verification, every emergency protocol triggered at the agency level converges on a truth that our existing vocabulary barely has the capacity to express. This object is not behaving like matter. It is behaving like intention. Return one final time to the sequence of events and let them land with their full force. An object from outside our solar system decelerated without expelling mass. It navigated to a mathematically precise gravitational coordinate. It vibrated Earth's ionosphere in a structured, prime number harmonic pattern. It shifted its own rotation axis to aim directly at our magnetic pole, in violation of angular momentum conservation, and the atmosphere responded instantly. It formed a standing geometric grid in our upper atmosphere. And then it took our own message, the one we sent to the stars half a century ago, and it sent it back, edited, precise, and biologically annotated. No single one of these events has a satisfying natural explanation. Together, the combined probability of all of them occurring in a single object through natural processes is a number so large it ceases to function as a meaningful statistical concept, 1 in 4.7 quadrillion. That is the floor. The actual combined figure is beyond calculation. The energy puzzle adds another dimension that refuses to close. 3.4 terawatts of organized electromagnetic output, phase-locked across 185 million kilometers of space, sustaining coherence through the turbulence of the solar wind without degradation. A block of ice does not do that. A known natural object does not do that. Whatever internal process is generating and directing that energy is operating by principles we have not yet written down. The modification of the Arecibo message is the element that demands the most careful thought. It was not a reflection. A reflection preserves the original. This was a response, structured, specific, and different in ways that carry information. Phosphorus replaced with silicon in the genetic sequence. The asteroid belt marked instead of Earth. These are not corruptions of a signal. They are edits with apparent meaning. Something examined what we sent and chose to say something back. Whether that something is ancient and automated or active and aware, the act of choosing, of selecting which elements to preserve and which to change, implies a processing capability that exceeds anything found in natural matter. The official silence speaks as clearly as the data. Classification protocols applied to comet observations do not exist as routine procedure. They are emergency responses. And emergency responses are triggered when the information being protected carries implications too significant for unmanaged public disclosure. The agencies watching 3i Atlas are not confused. They are deciding what to say and when to say it. Right now, the James Webb Space Telescope's NIRCam instrument is collecting infrared telemetry on this object in real time. The geometric signal pattern in the ionosphere remains active. As Atlas approaches its closest point to the Sun, the gravitational forces acting on it will either test its structural integrity or trigger a resonance event larger than anything yet observed. The detectors are live. The arrays are fully aligned. The data stream is open. And 3i Atlas is still out there, manipulating the sky above you, continuing whatever process it began the moment it entered our solar system. The question is no longer whether something extraordinary is happening. The question is whether we are ready for what comes next, and what we intend to say when we finally understand what was said to us first. If this story has changed the way you see the sky above you, share it with someone who needs to look up. Subscribe and stay close, because this is not the end of the data. It is the beginning of the answer.